Good evening from Lowell Observatory. We've got a real treat for you tonight. Today is National STEM Day, and I am here with Samantha Gorney, our Deputy Director for Education. My name is Danielle Adams, and I'm the Deputy Director for Marketing and Communications. And together we're going to have a fun talk about STEM and how we are integrating principles for our new educational exhibits based on principles of inclusion, regardless of people's background. And so what we're going to be focusing on tonight is our upcoming Astronomy Discovery Center. And Samantha is going to take us through some of the really neat aspects about that Astronomy Discovery Center coming up. And that is going to open in about 2.5 years in March of 2024. So we're really excited about it here. We've been listening to different kinds of machinery and whatnot, getting the ground prepared, ready for the next stages in construction. So welcome, Samantha. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. And let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you, Danielle. It's a pleasure to be here. And as you said, the ADC, the acronyms, we like acronyms so much here. The Kemper and Ethel Marley Foundation Astronomy Discovery Center is just going to be a world-class facility, and we're all so excited about it. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share a little more about what we're planning tonight. Before we start and kind of go into a tour of the ADC, I wanted to talk a little bit about, sorry, I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to chat a little bit about the importance of informal learning in STEM education. You know, we tend to kind of assume that school is where we do most of our science learning, but actually the average American spends about 5% of their life in school. So there must be something else going on there. And in fact, there's a growing body of evidence that suggests most of our science is actually learned outside of school and is supported by these informal resources. And places like Lowell Observatory are a really important part of that informal learning ecosystem. And you know, another aspect of this is that in these informal environments, the pressure is really off. You know, for people that may be intimidated by the subject matter in school, that pressure isn't there at places like Lowell. You know, science is just, we're doing science for the fun of it and learning about science for the fun of it. And you know, there's no tests or quizzes, and people get to learn about some really cool stuff at their own pace. And, you know, it's called free choice learning because people get to decide what they want to learn about within whatever subject matter is being presented. So, you know, I don't mean to diminish the science learning that takes place in schools at all. It's critical, but so too is this informal learning that takes place outside of school. And if people are interested in learning more, the slide that I have here points you to an article that appeared in the American Scientist by Falk and Dierking. And if you're interested, there's a whole bunch more information in this article that I would steer you toward. So the next thing I'd like to do is kind of just walk through some of the major attractions in the Astronomy Discovery Center. We'll start with kind of a bird's eye view here of the facility. So this is going to be an enormous facility. You can see in this view, one of the main attractions is pictured in the center there on top of the building. This is an open air planetarium and will seat between 180 and 200 guests. The facility will also have a couple of exhibit halls, one for just general astronomy content and one that's designed specifically for children. And, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge that the ADC is really going to fill a huge gap that exists currently in Northern Arizona, which is that we don't have a science center. And there are a number of underserved kids in Northern Arizona, and this is going to be just a tremendous resource for kids in this region and adults.
Do you think this will draw a lot of school groups?
I do. Yeah, I think it'll be a major attraction for our local schools, even schools down in the Phoenix area, and also importantly for schools on the reservations as well. In fact, we're working with our local school district, the Flagstaff Unified School District, as we're developing programs for visiting school groups. So we're going to have a close relationship with our local school district, and you know we'll make efforts to reach out to schools beyond Flagstaff. And again, those on the reservation will be a really critical part of that. All right. So this view shows the front side of the building. You can also see the main entrance there in the middle. One programming aspect that's going to make this facility really unique is that we're not just going to kind of throw a bunch of random facts at our visitors. Instead, we're going to invite them to participate in this really cool journey in which they'll get to learn about one of the greatest stories of all time. That story being the story of the universe and how we went from the Big Bang to life. We really feel like this is just an incredible epic tale, and that our visitors are going to be super excited to come on this learning journey with us.
That sounds like a lot of content.
Yes.
The Big Bang to life.
Yeah, it's only the whole universe and its evolution. So,
how are we going to focus that down? Like, what could the average person expect to learn while they're here?
So basically, the way we will frame this is to talk about how the atoms in our bodies have traveled through the universe over time. So that kind of narrows the scope a little bit. You know, the elementary particles that make up those atoms were forged shortly after the Big Bang and have kind of traveled through the universe to eventually become part of us here on Earth. So that's kind of the framework. And it should be a pretty personal experience, one that's pretty engaging.
Nice.
So in this space, which we're calling the Joe Orr Origins Gallery, visitors will really get a preview of what's to come. So this sort of serves as like the trailer for the story that I mentioned. You can see on the ceiling there, what's depicted is particle tracks. So those are intended to represent those first elementary particles that were formed after the Big Bang. And then as you move downward toward the floor, you see those kind of molecular shapes. And those depict the formation of atoms and molecules and how they came together to form galaxies and solar systems. And then finally on the floor, we'll have some elements that will represent life. So again, just kind of that trailer for the experience that visitors will get. The Universe Theater is one of the main amenities of the ADC. And in this space, visitors will really have an immersive experience, and we'll be able to take them to distant places in the universe in a really immersive way. The screen in here will be an enormous wraparound screen, state-of-the-art technology. And you can see in this image, there will be an adjacent overhead screen. So those elements will combine to create that really immersive experience. Also, shows in here will be facilitated by live presenters. So that's another unique element, or somewhat unique. And the shows will be augmented with live science demos. So, you know, the ever popular liquid nitrogen demos and dry ice and all kinds of fun stuff.
Nice. And the screen for scale is going to be 25 feet tall, right?
Yes.
And about 100 feet wide,
yes.
Wrapping around. Yeah, that's huge. That's like IMAX, but wrapping around you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty staggering, yeah. Okay, this is that facility that we looked at on one of those first slides. So the facility that's on the rooftop, the name of this is the Richard F. Karras Dark Sky Planetarium. And it's similar to a planetarium, only here people get to see the real sky as the dome. We have these gorgeous dark skies in Flagstaff that allow us to do that. And in this space, our guests will get to learn about the stories that are inscribed in the night sky as constellations, and, you know, connect with humans that were writing these stories, you know, hundreds and thousands of years ago. And along with those stories, those kind of traditional stories, they'll also get to learn about the scientific stories that we've come to know about various objects in the night sky. So like the Orion Nebula, you know, the story of what's taking place there as a stellar nursery where stars are being birthed.
And since we're in Flagstaff, there's one feature of this Dark Sky Planetarium that I'm really excited about. What is that, Samantha?
That would probably be the heated seats, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Yes.
So these nice cushy chairs that you see in the image here will be heated, which will be critically important in the winters here in Flagstaff. And even on some summer nights, the temperature drops significantly. The other thing to point out here is that screen that you see in the front there. We'll have some pretty innovative technology that will allow us to augment the shows with images. And that'll be pretty powerful, I think, for our visitors. You know, our educators will be able to point to things with laser pointers. So, you know, an object like the Orion Nebula, which to our eye looks like a blurry star. And they can point that out and then call up an image of the Orion Nebula so that, you know, we really couple those together for our visitors, and they leave with this image in mind so that the next time they look up at the Orion Nebula, at this fuzzy, faint object, they can call up that beautiful nebula that they saw on the screen. So I'm pretty excited about that. These shows obviously will be facilitated by live presenters as well.
Yeah, that's going to be really special. And we did have a question come in. I'm truly excited for this. When will the Science Center be constructed? And we are, it's being constructed right now, actually. And again, we're aiming for a March 2024 opening. In fact, we're hoping that we can open on Percival Lowell's birthday on March 13th. So we'll, you know, hope very much that we don't have construction delays.
Yes. And we'd like to have it open in time for the solar eclipse. It'll be partial here, but that will follow March. It'll be shortly behind March, so.
Yep, April 8th is that eclipse.
Right, yes. Okay. So we're going to talk more about this space in a little bit, but I just wanted to introduce it here. This is what we're calling the Curiosity Zone. And this is a children's exhibit hall filled with hands-on science explorations that will be designed for 0 to 8-year-olds. And the way this space is laid out, the experiences for younger kids are located toward the front of the gallery near the entrance. And the experiences cater to older kids as you move back farther in the gallery. Part of that is to mitigate noise that may leak out into the gallery. You know, the older kids are likely to be noisier as they're engaging with these really cool science exhibits. So we kind of place those toward the back so that we don't have, gleeful screams coming out of the gallery from the front. We'll touch more on this in a minute, as I mentioned. So another space is this Astronomy Gallery. We're calling it Astronomy Gallery 1 because we are planning to add 2 additional galleries in the future. And this is really where visitors will learn about that incredible story that I mentioned earlier. And we will step them through that story in reverse order. We're going to start with what they know, which is life and Earth and our, where we are in the universe. And then we'll step back in time as visitors move through these other galleries. So it's also important to note that this gallery will pick up where the children's gallery leaves off. So, it'll be appropriate for ages 8 to 108. Although I should note that, we're not gonna restrict anyone. There won't be any height restrictions here or anything where you have to be this tall to enter the gallery or this old. Like, everyone will be welcome in this space, and, likewise for the children's gallery. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the design principles that are being programmed into this facility. One of those important philosophies is that, science is for everyone. We want visitors to come here feeling welcome, no matter what their background, no matter how much science they may have under their belt. And one of the ways we will do that is by being a little bit humorous or whimsical. We have these kind of special little things sprinkled throughout the ADC and beyond that'll kind of help people, break down their guard a little bit and let them know that we have a sense of humor here. Scientists are human beings and there's no reason to be intimidated by them. And again, that anyone can be a scientist. We want to break down that notion of feeling like it's us and them. We're all scientists. Another way we're going to do that is by having elements like the one that's shown here, which is our Diverse Universe exhibit. And this one will consist of little panels that highlight different people in astronomy. And these people are from nearly every country in the world. Of every variety. So, the idea here is that we want anyone to be able to see themselves in this wall. So no matter what your gender, your ethnicity, you will be able to identify with one of these panels and see that you are, represented in astronomy, and you can be part of this if you choose to be. So really just inclusivity, and that's something that we're striving for throughout this facility, and more broadly in our programming, even beyond the facility. I should note here also that these panels are available for sponsorship. A number of them have been claimed already, but there are several available still, and you can take a look at them on our website. We have them up, and you can read the description and sponsor one if you choose to.
And you can get there by going to lowell.edu/ADC.
So another design principle that I wanted to talk about is this set of sort of best practices that came out of a study called the EDGE study, and that stands for Exhibit Design for Girls' Engagement. This was something that was developed by the Exploratorium in the Bay Area. And they basically sent people around to observe how girls engage with science exhibits at various science centers. Not just girls, boys and girls, but specifically they were looking at girls and whether or not they were really being engaged by these different exhibits. And out of that, they kind of whittled it down to these 9 principles that are very important for engaging girls in science exhibits. And you can see them on the screen here. They fall into 3 categories. The first category has to do with the exhibit labels. And then there's another section that deals with the exhibit look and feel. And then finally, how you interact with the exhibit. So where the exhibit labels are concerned, having drawings they found is really helpful for engaging girls. So these drawings would demonstrate how you do the thing, whatever the thing is for that exhibit, rather than having it be only, steps that are outlined through text. Having a diagram there where you can just look at it and visually see what you need to do is helpful. Also including images of people is helpful. In terms of the exhibit look and feel, incorporating familiar objects is important. So things that you would see, just in your daily life, like they have some examples there of a rubber duck and a ball. Also including elements that are homey or personal in some way that maybe have kind of a homemade appearance. So, if you're constructing a little floater thing for a wind tunnel, you'd want to have materials like maybe paper cups and pipe cleaners available to design your flyers with, rather than like stylized pieces of foam. Also having this, as I mentioned previously, this playful or whimsical approach is really important as well. And that's a driving principle for us more beyond the Children's Gallery, but will be very prominent in the Children's Gallery as well. Where exhibit interactions are concerned, one of the things that's important is to be able to accommodate multiple people, and also to have multiple stations or sides from which you can engage with the exhibit. Also, the ability to watch from a distance to kind of preview what the exhibit is about and how to engage with it. And also, they found that open-ended explorations are far more engaging for girls than ones that are kind of prescripted. So that's a really brief summary of these design attributes. And I'll talk a little bit about what that looks like in application for us. So these EDGE attributes will show up in both the Children's Gallery and the Astronomy Gallery, because we intend to cater to ages 8 and beyond in the Astronomy Gallery, so it's important that they appear in there as well.
That's great. The open-ended piece, is that like having multiple solutions for a particular activity or multiple ways to interact with it?
Right. So rather than, it being sort of a recipe where you do 1, 2, 3, and you have a certain outcome, you can engage with it in multiple ways, or there are multiple outcomes, or in some cases, unlimited outcomes. Those are far more engaging for girls than these sort of recipe style exhibits. Oh, I also wanted to note here that, these design attributes they found do not detract from boys' experience. In fact, they tended to improve everyone's experience, no matter what gender you are. So it's not as if, somebody's losing out by designing to these standards. It makes it more equitable across the board.
Great.
And, I think this is fairly obvious, but why is it important to do this? Well, we know that girls are really underrepresented in the STEM fields. And so, and we also know how important these informal educational experiences are for science learning. And so those two things make it critically important that we do a good job of engaging girls in our exhibit halls and here at Lowell more generally. Another way we've done that is through our staff. So we really are intentional about having our staff demonstrate equity. So, we strive to have as many female educators as we do male. And that is really important for our visitors. I've seen girls light up at the sight of a female telescope operator, for instance, and be inspired by them. And, it really helps them see that there's a path for them if they're interested in that.
That's great. There's a question from Dulcimeris on YouTube here, who asks if the new exhibits are going to be similar to what the St. Louis Science Center has. They say, my favorite was always the centrifugal force exhibit, where people could roll coins down a slot and they'd spin along a conical shape and eventually drop into the center hole. What kind of exhibits are we going to have? Are we going to have similar things that demonstrate like physics principles?
Yeah, so we will have a number of what we're calling science exhibits that really highlight, these fundamental principles in science. So there's electricity and magnetism, gravity, motion and force. So really just these fundamental principles that you would learn about in an intro physics course. We will highlight those through these hands-on science exhibits in the Children's Gallery and also in the Astronomy Gallery. And yes, we do, I should note, have one of those centrifugal force, we call it our black hole, the thing where you launch a coin and it travels down to the center of the black hole and becomes a donation to Lowell ultimately.
Yeah, I believe we've got that in the gift shop.
We do, yes, but we'll have a different rotational motion exhibit in the Children's Gallery and also one in the Astronomy Gallery. So I included one example of an exhibit that will appear in the Children's Gallery. So this is an optics table. So that's one that I glossed over, but of course in astronomy, optics is a very important component of astronomy. And so we'll have exhibits that highlight that as well. And this is one of those. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how this meets those design standards or principles. So really we'll focus on the exhibit interaction here. And you can see that it's large enough that you can approach, there's a few stations that you can engage with here. Also, multiple people can be present around this. You can envision having 3 or more kids gathered around this table. Another thing is that this will be visible from a distance so that you can kind of observe as people are engaging with it before you do so yourself. And then this is an open-ended exploration. There are any number of things you could choose to investigate here, and all kinds of outcomes that would come about from that. Another element to highlight is the little character that appears on the text panel in the back of the table there. So the little character there is Marzi, and we have another character we've dubbed Pluie. So these are from Mars and Pluto, respectively, these characters. And, it's something that children will be able to really relate to and will look forward to seeing throughout the gallery, and really does a nice job of making it more playful. It's, that element of whimsy. The other principles will not really show up until we design the instruction labels for all of these exhibits. So what you're seeing here is deficient in those things only because we haven't gotten to that stage of design yet. So that's where, including those homey elements or homemade images of people, and also having drawings that indicate how you would interact with the exhibit. Those will appear on that instruction label. And also some of the exhibits themselves. So including those homey elements, like in this exhibit, you could think of maybe including a magnifying glass as one of the optical elements here, or perhaps eyeglasses or something like that you would see in everyday life. So we haven't gotten to that stage of design yet either. What you're seeing here is just kind of a rendering. It's not the fully fleshed out design. So you're kind of getting a peek behind the curtain before it's fully put together. And then if I back up just a little bit here, looking back at the snapshot of the children's gallery, it's a little bit hard to see in this one, but almost all of the elements that are included in here really are mindful of all of those exhibit interaction principles. So, you can see them from a distance, you can approach from multiple sides, you can have multiple people engage with you, and also most of them have open-ended with many different outcomes that are possible.
That's great. Does that also influence, like, say, replayability or like revisitability for people to come back even to the same exhibits and have a new experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's because they are so open-ended, they can have a different outcome every time they interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the Astronomy Gallery, this exhibit that demonstrates how mass warps space-time, is a great example of, these edge design principles in play here. You can see that this is one that you'd be able to see from a distance. You could observe how people are interacting with it. Multiple people can interact at once. And again, here there are, unlimited outcomes. So, and again, really, we're only at a stage where we can speak to the exhibit interactions and how we've applied the edge design principles. The other elements will show up when we start designing those instruction panels, and also, will appear as we flesh out what exactly the interactive is and the materials that are required for that. I also wanted to mention that we're paying really careful attention to accessibility considerations where all of the exhibits are concerned, both in the Astronomy Gallery and the Children's Gallery. So, making sure that people who have visual or auditory impairments or physical impairments are able to engage with the majority of our exhibits. And we've also programmed in a quiet sensory space into the Children's Gallery for children with autism.
And can you talk a little bit about how we're doing that already, in part at the Giovanni Open Deck Observatory?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we designed the Giovanni Open Deck Observatory, we knew that this was important for us. And so we figured out how we could make it as accessible as possible. And to achieve that, we selected special piers for the telescopes for, let's see, 3 of our 4 telescopes that you view through with your eye are on movable piers so that the telescope can be lowered to a level at which a person in a wheelchair can roll up and look through the eyepiece without having to get out of their chair at all. It's good for children as well, or others that are shorter. And then our 2 of the remaining 3 telescopes are hooked up to screens, and that allows anyone to engage with those telescopes. They're not ones that you look through with your eye, rather you look at the screen. So a whole crowd can gather, and people who have physical accessibility issues or other issues are able to engage with those as well. So only one of our 6 telescopes is not accessible.
Great.
Okay. And then finally, I wanted to also point out that there will be many options to explore in both the Children's Gallery and the Astronomy Gallery. People will be able to explore through many different senses. So we'll have tactile exhibits, auditory exhibits that, in some cases demonstrate how data can be sonified. So it's a different way to engage with data. And also, we even have one that will allow people to smell the universe if they so choose. So,
the good and the bad smells?
Yes, of course, yeah.
That's awesome. What is the sonification of the universe? How does that work?
So it's similar to like how we are able to visualize infrared information. You can assign different colors to different temperatures and can create an image of an infrared essentially. So it's false color, but you're able to see the data and similarly, or see the temperatures rather. And similarly, we can do that with sound. Basically, you would assign different pitches to different numbers and be able to hear data in that way. So you could envision kind of sweeping through like an image of a galaxy, and the lines that have more light would be a different pitch than those that are darker. So you can, in a way, hear the numbers that are associated with that image. And
that's really great.
In
I
fact, one of the, at least one of the panels that's featured as part of that diverse universe wall highlights an astronomer who is deaf, and actually that's the way that astronomer is able to process their data, or I'm sorry, who is blind, and that's the way they're able to process the data is by listening to it.
Wow. Oh, that's really exciting. So this all opens March of 2024.
If everything goes as planned, yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
And Mother Nature cooperates.
Yes, indeed. Let me see. We have another question from Dulcimerist. Will you have a few exhibits that rotate in and out?
Not initially, but we will, the time scale for refreshing will be on the order of 5 to 10 years. So we'll need to go through and refresh, and at that point, perhaps change out some of the exhibits. And also remember, we have those 2 additional galleries that will be coming online at some point in the hopefully near future. So that will infuse our facility with a whole bunch of new experiences for people. But after we open, we'll be carefully looking at how people engage with the exhibits and how successful they are. Some of that we will do before we open through prototyping, so we won't totally miss the mark with any of our exhibits, because we will have tested them to ensure that that's not the case. But, inevitably there will be some things that don't work well, maybe aspects of an exhibit, and we will, update those exhibits as needed based on that information as we gather it.
Will those exhibits be the subject of more edge studies to verify the programming?
Nothing is formally in place yet, but I would love to engage in that and, participate in that research project. I think that will be a real possibility for us.
Mm-hmm. Great. And for those who are with us on YouTube, feel free to put any questions you may have into the chat, and we'll get Samantha to answer them. Oh, and we've got another one right here. From Sophia: if a child or young person is inspired to study astronomy, will there be any information about what to study or how to pursue it?
So I would say that probably that's where our educators will come into play. If a child is really inspired and wants to know more, we will probably point them to an educator and ask them to chat with an educator about how they might explore that further. And perhaps that's something we could think about having as a resource on our website as well, so that we could kind of steer people toward some information. But most of our educators are undergraduate students at NAU studying some form of science, in many cases astronomy or physics. And so they are just a great resource for kids, and can speak to how they, what their trajectory was and how they got to where they are.
Mm-hmm. And even now, we have also some of our astronomers take part in different activities on campus. And so you may get to ask a research astronomer How did you get to do that?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Great, good question. Let me see if there are any other questions. I don't see any more that have come in. Oh, no, here's another one. Oh, okay, we've got a few coming here. Let me see. So from Dulcimeris again, will there be space with seating for live demonstrations from time to time?
So
like liquid nitrogen.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. We will have seating in the Universe Theater, seating for between 180 and 200 people there. And in those shows, we will incorporate science demos. But also in the Children's Gallery, we'll have the ability to bring educators into that space and lead demonstrations. And liquid nitrogen is always a hit. So you can rest assured that it will appear in the Children's Gallery. In terms of seating in there, we do have some seating programmed in, but that's something we probably should think about a little more carefully and make sure that we have adequate seating for when these demonstrations take place.
Do you imagine those more as like impromptu kind of little pop-up science demos for 10 minutes and then it goes off?
Yeah, precisely that. And, I think with the ADC, we will open up a number of opportunities for volunteers. And I can envision having a whole cadre of volunteers who are, interested in engaging with kids, like maybe they were former educators or teachers, and that will be a great space for volunteers to have some really enriching opportunities. So, kind of the model where you see a docent, doing liquid nitrogen demonstrations. And depending on the interest there, we could have people in the Children's Gallery at most times. But some of that will depend on, how interested volunteers are in helping us with that.
Mm-hmm. There's another question from Bruce. How do you customize design attributes for older students, like high school?
So, the challenge in informal education is designing for everyone. So basically the strategy there is to make it fun enough and cool enough that everyone enjoys it, no matter what their age. And so that's kind of a dodgy answer, but that's what I would say is that, it has to be cool enough and engaging enough that an 8-year-old will like it, and a high school student will like it, and an 88-year-old will like it.
Yeah, that's no small task.
Yeah, not only are we dealing with the whole universe, but we're also dealing with the whole spectrum of ages and backgrounds. And
yeah. Well, it is absolutely exciting. I can't wait to start seeing some of these things take shape once we have a building, that is. So first steps first. I know the next phase is going to be pouring some concrete.
Yes.
To get us ready for the pad. So that's wonderful. Let me just see if there are any last questions before we sign off tonight. And while we're waiting for that, Samantha, do you have any last comments or notes about the Astronomy Discovery Center?
I would just reiterate how excited I am for filling this gap that exists in Northern Arizona. I grew up in Flagstaff, and we don't have a science center in Northern Arizona. Lowell was an incredibly important resource for me as a child. And this is really just going to step that up to a whole new level. And, finally, we will have science exhibits for children, which we've never had throughout our history, which is really exciting. So that's what I really look forward to.
Yeah, it's going to be a great place. And a place that you can go to rain or shine, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It'll really open up the possibilities for people to learn about science.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all who are watching for joining us. Samantha, thank you so much for spending some time tonight to share about the Astronomy Discovery Center and how we're crafting the exhibits to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And if you're watching and you want to learn more about the Astronomy Discovery Center, you can go to Lowell, lowell.edu/ADC, and that will get you right to information about the Astronomy Discovery Center. And also, if you are getting inspired through this chat here tonight and want to give to help support the Astronomy Discovery Center, you can do that at that location as well. We're, I believe, a little bit over 80% raised, and so we've got some more to go.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Samantha, and we'll sign off now. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.